Got real quiet all of a sudden. Can y'all see that okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not going to be using my slides much.
But there will be a quiz at the end.
That's super boring. Welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about honey and selling honey and harvesting and processing honey. And we're going to try to do all that in an hour. But I don't want to bore you all with stuff you already know. So what I'm going to ask is stop me with whatever question you have. If that's too embarrassing, you can ask afterwards. And if that's still too embarrassing, you can come to the online thing that we are starting to do 2 weeks from now, and you'll see emails about it, but it's just an online thing where you can just come and talk. It's not one of us lecturing. We just all get to talk. So you can talk what's going on with your bees. We'll all share our opinions or whatever else, and we're happy to do that. So how many of you are harvesting honey for your first time this year? Yeah? How many of you have harvested honey more than once already?
This year?
Just in general? Okay. And for the folks who don't have their hands up, we have haven't done it yet?
No.
Okay, cool. So we will cover this, and for the people who haven't done it, please stop with as much question about detail as you'd like. That's fine. And for those who have done it, share how you like to do things, because we all do it about 1,000 different ways. So let's talk about harvesting honey. And the way I'm going to describe harvesting honey is the act of getting honey away from your hives. And I'll describe kind of 3 ways you can do this. But this is one of those things that benefits from a little bit of planning, because there's a little bit of logistics of manipulating everything. Because the name of the game is taking boxes away from the bees and keeping the bees away from the boxes, which sounds easy, but as soon as bees start to smell honey, they want to go to the honey, and then they're all in your honey, and the whole point was to get them out. So it's like a little bit of game of move the box, cover the box, keep working. So thinking ahead about how you're going to do this helps. But the real trick is, of course, getting the bees out of the boxes. So one way to do this, and this is what I use. This is called a bee escape. Has anyone ever seen these or used these? Yeah. So bee escapes are like a one-way gate for your bees. So if all the boxes on top are your honey supers that you want to take, and down below is everything you don't want to take, you just slide this in between with all the honey supers on top. And what happens is the bees, as they need to go out to the hive to keep foraging, leave out through this screen, and they're too stupid to figure their way back in. And so over the 2 or 3 days, the bees just leave. They can't get back in. You come back out, and the boxes are pretty much bee-free. Pretty much. Not completely. There's always going to be a few. But the nice thing about these, they work forever. Downside is it takes 2 or 3 days. So you kind of have to think about that if you're using these for your bees, to say, I want to harvest honey. 3 days from now, go out there and put these on. The other popular way to do this is with a fume board. Does anyone have a fume board? No? I don't have one. I don't use them. That's not because they're bad or anything. I just don't. Fume boards are a bit like that. They look like a top cover for a hive, but they have a bit of material in it that's absorbent, and there's a scent that you can spray onto it. The smell, when I've been around them, they smell kind of like menthol and eucalyptus. It's like a strong smell, but bees really don't like it. So you go out to your hives, you plonk that thing on top. The smell makes the bees be like, I don't like it. They run further down into the hive, and in about 20 minutes, a few of those supers will be without bees. So kind of a neat thing you can do with a fume board is you could take your one fume board out to your bee yard, plonk it on one hive, give it about 20 minutes, take that fume board, put it on your second hive, start pulling the boxes, and by the time you're done, that second hive will be about ready to go. And so you can kind of do this leapfrog thing through your bee yard. I'm not sure with fume boards like how many supers it will clear. I don't really know. So if you have like 5 supers, it may not get them all. You may have to do 2 sets. I don't know. But they're pretty neat. They are a bit stinky. If you get one, keep it away from your other bee stuff so it all doesn't smell bad. But a fume board is another really good way to help get your bees out of the boxes. Those are the two ways that I would say are worth doing. Yes?
So, going back to the first one.
Yeah.
Bee escape,
Mhm.
so they're out of the hive for 2 or 3
They're out
days?
of the honey supers and
Oh,
still in
okay.
the boxes beneath. Yeah.
Alright, you answered my question.
Yep. The third way, and this is what I did my first year because I was not prepared to harvest honey, but I had it and I just assumed I wouldn't have it because you always get told as a first year beekeeper you don't have honey, and I did. So I had to go out there with mostly no plan. That's why I can tell you it's better to have one. So what you can also do is take a spare box, an empty super box out there with you, and just take the frames one by one, shake all the bees or brush all the bees off, put it in the separate new box, and just do it frame by frame by frame. The trick with that is it takes way longer, and the longer you're out there doing that, the more likely the bees will get into that box you just set aside, so you need to be very careful about how you cover it. I put the whole thing in a trash bag because that's all I had because I wasn't prepared, but you can just shake them frame by frame. It just takes a while. But either way, you get all of the bees out of those boxes, and a nice way to get the stragglers out, you've got your boxes that are mostly free from bees from the bee escape fume board or shaking them all, is you can turn the box up on its side and blow them out with a leaf blower. Not unlike super high tornado setting, but enough to dislodge them. That's another way. I would not recommend doing it with a whole thing of bees already in it because they don't like it and you don't need to make thousands of bees mad at once. But blowing them out with a leaf blower tends to get the last few out. But you've got your supers that are mostly beeless. The other half of this problem is keeping the bees out. So whether it's a garbage bag, a heavy bit of canvas that you're draping over the top, or reassembling like a fake hive with a cover and everything, you've got to keep the bees from getting back in because they will. As you're doing this, they'll smell the honey, they will want to start robbing, and the more bees that get back in there, you get to drive home with them, and they're just going to be there. So you've got to find a way to move those supers and keep the bees out. That's the name of the game of harvesting. One other little footnote about this is anything you're going to be doing with honey is going to get covered in honey. So if you're worried about the back of your truck getting covered in honey, lay something down. If you're doing this in a sedan like I have, put a tarp down. Everything's going to get covered in honey no matter how careful you think you are. You're going to be covered in it. And let's see. Has anyone here done bee math? We know about bee math? No? Okay, so bee math is like a fun thing you get to do over time when you're like, man, I have one hive. If it made this many supers of honey, that's this much. If I had 5 hives and that made this much, it would be like this much honey. And you start thinking about how big this gets really quick. And in particular with honey, that's when this really shows up. If you're using like mediums for your supers for honey, a full medium will weigh somewhere between 40 and 55 pounds. So it's a bit of a heavy lifting set of days when you're pulling all these boxes. But if you think, I have five hives, they each have 2 supers. Quick math, how many pounds of honey are you moving? Anyone?
400.
Yeah, I like it. 2? 40? Yeah, 400, yeah, great. 400 pounds you're moving in a day. That's hard on your back and it's hard on your car. So just think about space, size, weight as you're doing this. No one needs to like blow out tires or anything trying to move honey. You may have to do it in multiple trips. So that's harvesting. Any questions about this so far? This is the easy part.
When you do the bee escape,
Yeah.
do you put another like super underneath of it?
So,
Or like what do bees do
Yeah.
once you've excluded them from their honey spot?
So you can imagine like, say you have a single brood chamber and you're going to take all the honey, so then we have 3 boxes. I slide this right on top of the brood chamber. So all the bees are leaving out to go do flights, and when they come back in, they can't leave and go back up. So they just get stuck in the brood chamber, and they'll do whatever they do down there, but they can't get back in. And that's basically it.
So you're not at that point. You're not worried about like doing like swarm things.
No.
Or any of that kind of stuff.
Because I'm only going to leave it on there for a few days. So when I'm done and I come back and take it, I'll take all the boxes too, and it's fine. Like the population, it's really their brood chamber that they really think about in terms of population size and home. The rest is storage. So once you clear, like if you take every honey super and you just leave the single brood chamber, they still won't swarm again. I haven't seen that ever happen. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much. I guess we should talk about, yes?
I remember John Price talking about he put his frames in his garage
Yeah.
overnight.
We're about to talk about that.
But, are you gonna talk about it?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll let you
Go ahead.
But he said that the door on the garage didn't seal well, and when he got up the next morning, his garage was full of bees.
Yeah, they'll find it. Another thing is, and this is another, like, every beekeeper does it different, but how much honey should you leave behind for the bees for winter? It's a pretty big topic. When I went through my beekeeping class, I was told to leave a super of honey behind. I don't do that anymore. I was watching Bob Benny, and he does Caucasian bees, which behave a little differently than Italians. But he looks for 4 full frames of food to go into winter. And that's what I did last year, and my bees all survived just fine. So I personally am not worried about leaving a full super of honey behind. But that's how I do it. If you want to be safe, you can leave them a full super or even more. Italians are known to being really bad at rationing food. So you can leave them as much as you want, and they may clear it all out, and you still have to feed them. It just depends. There's not, I don't think this is the correct, precise way you have to do it. You just, like everything beekeeping, you keep an eye on them. But for, yes, Marcia.
Well, I've read that you can give them these, it looks like honey things, packets that you put in there.
Those are probably like sugar water packets. Are they like almost like sealed Ziploc baggies of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless it's something very different, you can buy pre-made syrups for your bees.
I thought it was just something else. I thought it was like they referred to it as not like sugar water or anything, but it was.
Like a fondant.
If it's a liquid, I wouldn't assume it's
It
fondant.
looked like
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Question?
So, we're first year beekeepers, we
Yeah.
have 2 deeps,
Mhm.
we're going to put a super on there.
Okay.
So, let's say that we do harvest the super.
Okay.
Once we're done,
Mhm.
once we take that off and get the frames out, then do you put the super back on? Do you leave both deeps there in place, or do you just go down to 1 deep?
Okay. I'm gonna give you the short answer is whichever you'd like, but it depends on if you, as a beekeeper, would like to run with 2 brood chambers or 1 brood chamber. Deeps are almost always used for brood chambers. Plenty of beekeepers do use them as honey supers as well. That way they have 1 piece of equipment. But a deep full of honey, oh, that sucks to pick up. But if you are running 2 deeps, do you have a queen excluder between them?
No, not yet.
Okay, so then those are both brood chambers. So you're going to put your honey super on, and if they fill it out and you pull that honey super off, you've got 2 brood chambers left. You can leave them as 2 deeps, as a 2 deep brood chamber, and go into winter like that.
Leave the super off.
Yeah, you can take it off, absolutely. The only trick if you're doing a double deep brood chamber is over winter they'll move up into the upper brood chamber, and then coming out of winter you flop the boxes so they go back to the bottom. Otherwise they'll never go back down to the bottom, and that's just a pretty common thing with double deeps. Alternatively, and I wouldn't recommend this late in the year, you could split your hives because you have 2 deeps, but I wouldn't recommend that this late. That might be a thing you want to do next spring. Does that answer your question? Okay. So you were asking about feed and stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It looked like a brick
Ah.
of
So that might have been fondant then. Yes. So that would be an emergency food for the winter. It's stable in all kinds of weather, so it lasts throughout the winter for your bees. Really common to chuck in there with your bees, and they can work on it all winter, and you can check on them, and if they're out, you can chuck more in. Syrup will go bad, freeze, and all that, but fondant, sugar bricks, mountain camps are built for the winter.
Okay, that's.
Yep. I lost my train of thought right before the question, so I hope did I leave anyone with an unanswered question so far before I keep going? Because we were talking about frames in the garage. Right on. Let's talk about processing honey. Processing I'm going to describe as the act of getting your honey out of frames and into lovely little jars or buckets or whatever strikes your fancy. Processing basically happens in two different ways, basically. One of them is with a fancy extractor. Anyone have one? Yeah, me too. These things they range from hand cranked to electric motors, all different sizes, all different kinds. The nice thing is you're having a machine do the job that you would otherwise have to do. I will say that you can extract more honey with them, but they come with a pretty hefty price tag. They kind of suck to clean, but they're there. And the way they work is you take your frames, you uncap them either with a knife or a little like prickly rolling pin to uncap all the wax cappings. You put them in there and it spins around and the honey gets whipped out to the sides and drains out the little tube in the front. That's how an extractor works. The club owns one and it is available to members. I will also say we are pretty much a new board and we don't know really where it is and how to get it to you. So I encourage you to demand it. You got it?
Okay, I have one of the extractors.
Sweet. Okay. We know where one is. Ask for it and we'll figure this out. Would be my advice. Force us to solve the problem. So that's an extractor. The other way is called crushing and straining. Has anyone crushed and strained? Yeah. It's a rite of passage. There's nothing wrong with this technique, but it's labor intensive and it's slow. It's a DIY style thing. That's why this is a picture of a spoon in a bucket, because that's more or less what it winds up looking like. And the basic deal with a crush and strain is you will have a container to catch the honey and another container that will hold your wax that the honey can drip through. And you will take your frames and scrape absolutely everything out of the frames down to the plastic foundation, or if it's a wax foundation, it's gone. You get it all into that first container and you squeeze, 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 crush, 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 crush. And then over the next however long, in my experience, days, the honey drips down into the second bucket, and now you have honey. Downsides of this is it takes a long time, takes a lot of work. Upsides is you can do it with stuff you can find in your home. It always is available, and you get to keep the wax for other wax products. With an extractor, you get to give the wax back to the bees for next year. That may sound like that's a pro and con depending on how you look at it, whether you get to keep the wax or get rid of it. If you only use an extractor, you have the problem of you're giving the bees old wax over and over again, and every couple of years you do want to cycle that out anyway. If you crush and strain, they always have to make their new wax, which makes them slow in the beginning to build it up, but you get the wax at the end, so it depends. That's the basic bits about processing. When you're done, you will have a container of unfiltered honey. Filtering honey is a bit of preference. What I will tell you is minimally I would recommend putting your honey through a metal strainer, not like a colander for pasta, but one of the finer mesh ones. And that's it. That's all you really need to do, and that'll catch like bee legs and heads and other junk that made it through. Anything more than that, knock yourself out, but I don't think anyone cares. It comes out pretty clean after that. From there, you can put it in jars, bottles, buckets, whatever you'd like. I will tell you that a medium super of honey that I run through my extractor pulls about 2.5 gallons of honey. 5-gallon buckets are your friend. Please buy food grade buckets. They're $5 at Walmart. They're crappy buckets. They break a lot, but they're cheap and accessible. There are $3 pickle buckets at Firehouse Subs, but all your honey will smell like pickles. Now, Phyllis brought up a point about the honey in the garage. So what's going to happen is, after you've harvested your honey, you've got to bring it home, or somewhere you're going to harvest it. Most people do not process honey in the bee yard because the bees will get you. So they take it home, garage, your house, whatever. Honey flows faster in warmer temperatures. So garages are nice because they tend to be hot. If you bring it inside, that's fine. It's just going to take longer because it's at a colder temperature. That's why crushing and straining tends to take extra long, because we do it inside usually. But here's the thing. You're going to bring all those boxes in to your garage, let's say. And most garages are not airtight and they're not sealed, which means all kinds of critters can find the honey while you store it. So while I'm not going to say you've got to process it immediately, in fact, there's a benefit to not doing that, you can't just leave it there and assume it's safe. All kinds of stuff will find it, from other bees, wax moths will get in there, ants, you name it. So there is a sort of timing aspect to this where you don't want to say like, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it. You won't have anything to get. But it is helpful sometimes to let your honey sit for a day or two. And the reason why is moisture content in your honey. So if there is, and this is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's what you'll find whenever you talk about honey with people. If the moisture content is too high in your honey, it will ferment and become alcohol, like mead. This is because all honey has wild yeast in it, and the yeast needs moisture to activate. And so it's really about the yeast, not the moisture. But all we can control is moisture. We can't do anything about the yeast that's in it. And so I can't remember the exact percentage we want to get our honey beneath. It's something like 16% or 18%. Do you remember, Brian?
Yeah, 16 to 18.
Yeah. Rule of thumb is if the honey is capped, like all the wax has nice cappings on it, congratulations, you're good. If there's a lot of uncapped honey you're processing, you might want to check. And the way you check is with a refractometer. You can put it in there, look in the light, and it'll tell you how much moisture's in it. But going back to why putting it in your garage for a few days could be beneficial is you can dry the honey out a little bit. And the simplest way to do this is to build like a Dexter-style kill room in your garage, hang plastic sheeting up to make like a barrier, stack up all your honey supers, put a box fan on top, blowing air through, come back in a day or two and it will have dropped a few percentages, give you thicker honey. People say that not only does that make it more like gives us a better mouthfeel, people like it better, but you're also helping to eliminate the risk of bottling honey with too much moisture that will later ferment on people. When you're done crushing and straining, the wax cap, this looks all really shiny because it's full of honey. When it's done, it'll look pretty dry, surprisingly dry. Drier than you think should be possible for something that was just covered in honey, but it does dry out. You can take that wax and render it down into wax bricks or whatever, and then candles, soap, lip balms, you name it. I'd recommend you can either look up recipes for that stuff online, go to a library, they'll have books on it. Making like lip balms with beeswax is pretty fun, and I would highly recommend adding that to your repertoire of things you sell because it takes really little effort, really little material, and people buy lip balm for outrageous prices. So now we have our honey processed and in jars. Yeah, we good? Following this so far? Maybe? Okay, let's talk about selling. I admit this part's going to get a little dry because you'll see. So, little thing here. I'm going to put this here. These are pictures I took a year ago of honey in various places. So we can see does anyone recognize the ones on the right? That's the Fresh Market in Rogers. So they sell that honey there. That is a 16-ounce bottle of honey for $17. This is a little 10-ounce jar, I think, at a gas station. That's a very fancy gas station. And that is $13. Whatever you think you're probably selling your honey for is probably not enough. is why I'm showing you these pictures. I've met too many beekeepers who are like, oh, I'll sell it for like $6 a pound. They're not. And we don't know where this is from. They can put the word local on anything and it could be from anywhere. Local means nothing. So if they can put that stuff in a jar and sell it for $17, you can sell your honey for $15. It's fine. Don't undersell yourself. I have yet to hear a story of someone saying, I tried to sell my honey, but it's too expensive. That has yet to happen that I've heard. So don't undersell yourself when you're selling honey. For anyone that has sold honey, would you like to share any experience with pricing and any of that?
So I sold just the quart jars,
Uh-huh.
and I was doing them for about 12 because that seemed to be what was kind of market price.
Uh-huh.
I'm
For,
gonna up that.
for a quart?
Yeah,
Ooh,
I'm gonna up that to 15.
yeah, I would for sure.
Clay Burger, where we found out about, he sells it for 45 a quart.
There you go. A quart would be about
Oh my gosh.
so a pound of honey, 16 ounces by weight, is a 12-ounce jar, and I would say that typically would sell in a store for $13 to $15. So a quart is several of those.
Okay, I'm not thinking a quart then. I'm doing much smaller, like,
Quart
Okay.
like a mayonnaise jar, a little bigger than a mayonnaise jar.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that much. I'm doing
Okay. Yeah.
smaller than that.
So yeah, I want to put this out because like when I talk to people about honey, they're like, "Oh, I sell it for so little." Like, no, go for it. You're worth it. Your bees worked. Do it.
Pint, yes, sorry. It was a
Pint. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about boring stuff. Yay. Let's talk about how you can legally sell honey in this state and not get arrested by the honey police. There are laws that exist about how we have to label honey. Here they are. Now, unfortunately, there are laws that kind of sit on top of each other or conflict or don't acknowledge each other, which makes it super confusing. So these top few bullets are from, I think, the federal government. And then this last one is, I think, Arkansas. I can't remember. But basically, your honey has to have a label on it. No unmarked jars. The main word on the jar, on the label, has to say the word honey in super big letters. Nothing too crazy yet. You need to have contact information for you or your business on the label. That could be an address, a phone number, an email address. That's fine. The date it was packaged doesn't have to be to the day and time, but, April of 2025. And it needs to have the weight in pounds or ounces and in metric. Now, who here knows that ounces are both volume and weight? Wait until you try to put that in a jar and you're like, wait, how much is this? No, that's two numbers. How does that work? That's going to melt your brain a bit. A 12-ounce jar is 1 pound. Think about it. There are conversions that'll help you with that to help you know how much weight of honey you're putting into a volume of ounces, and you'll need that to fill that out. You look like you got a question on that one.
8 ounces is a cup,
Uh-huh.
so 12 ounces is a cup and a half. Because you're talking volume, when you say 12 ounces.
12 ounces by volume is 1 pound by weight. Yes, but they're both ounces. That's why that's super obnoxious. So they got to have that, which encourages us all to use similar sized jars and not random mayonnaise and pickle jars because you'd go crazy and no one wants to buy a pickle jar of honey. And this last one, this is like from the, I think it's called like the Cottage Industry Act or something. This one gets into a gray area. It mostly applies to processed foods, but honey sits in a gray area where sometimes it's considered processed or not. But it needs to have this language. This product was produced in a private residence that is exempt from state licensing and inspection. This product might contain allergies. Now, if you go to any farmer's market and look at their jars of honey, you will not find that on any label. That does not mean they are doing it legally correct. But again, I don't know if there's too many honey police in the area looking. So you want to be obnoxiously safe? Here's the rules. If you're giving it to your friends and family, I don't think they're going to come after you. But if you are going to start selling to strangers, I will highly recommend you do it correctly. There's no reason to invite trouble. Now, I will tell you a little bit about what I understand about selling honey, but people who have sold honey more than me should absolutely share your experience with this. There's lots of stuff out there about what kind of jar you should use, what colors your label should be, what language you should use, like local, raw, all that stuff. I will tell you that no words that you put on your label have any legal meaning. So if you want to say local, raw, organic, honey, blah, blah, you can say any of that and it's fine. There's no meaning to any of those words, even organic. There's no such thing. You can label your honey with all that stuff. It's allowed. What you cannot do is use the USDA organic label. That you have to pay $5,000 for. And that is all it takes. There is no inspection for honey because they don't care about honey. It's just a $5,000 fee. I went down a long rabbit hole about that a couple years ago. Like, how are people putting this on there? It's not organic. And sure enough, you can just pay for the licensing right and they'll let you do it because they're not gonna, there's no such thing, so they don't care. So you can put the label on it if you pay. So you can come up with whatever language you think helps you sell your honey. I don't think it matters much unless many, like, is anyone here like, that's it? My future is selling honey at scale. Anyone doing that? No? Let me ask this. Does anyone really want to sell honey at all other than to break even? No. Breaking even? Yeah?
Gifts.
Gifts, yeah. That's what I figured. So most of this won't matter. But you can do whatever you want with words. You can label it however pretty you want. As long as it's attractive, as long as it looks nice, people aren't going to really worry about it. In terms of actually selling it, the only real challenge is making people aware that you have it for sale. That can be, there was a young kid in here last year when we talked about this, and he's like, I've never had a problem selling honey. I've always been able to sell all the honey. And I'm like, well, get up here and talk. And he was like, I just go knock on everyone's door and said, would you like to buy some honey? That's all he does, and he sells it all. It's really just letting them know you have it, and it tends to work itself out. So don't overcomplicate it, whether it's posting on Facebook, knocking door to door, whatever you want to do. If you let them know that you have honey available, people will probably buy it. My little kind of funny story about this is sometimes after our meeting, I go over to Bentonville Brewing because I'd like a beer. And I noticed one day they had a collaborative thing from Paolo's Honey beer. And I was like, how dare you? I want to hear everything about this. And they're like, oh, well, we did this thing and we made this beer with honey in it. And I'm like, why didn't you just contact like a local beekeeping association? You could have had local honey instead of whatever that junk is. And they're like, well, we didn't know. And I was like, well, I'm a beekeeper and now you know. And they're like, well, can you sell me honey? And I was like, no. I don't have any. Does the brewery want any? And they're like, no, that was a total disaster, but I'll buy your honey right now. And I was like, I'm showing up with a trunk later, trunk full of honey for them. But that's happened at every place I've gone to, every place of business where it's come up that I'm a beekeeper. People have been like, can I buy your honey? Like right then and there. So I think my plan will be drive around with a trunk full of jars and be like, come on, I got the good stuff. Doesn't take much. So just make people aware and you can sell it, and don't undercharge yourself. That's the big thing. Now we're ready to talk about the super boring part about how not to get everything taken away from you in a lawsuit. Yay! I bet no one's ever thought about this. So my normal job is I own my own business. I'm a consultant. And so these are topics I get to deal with for me and my clients. I'm not a lawyer. Don't think anything I'm about to say is legal advice. That'd be a bad mistake. But as beekeepers, it's easy to say that, like, even if we're just selling honey, what could go wrong, right? Here's the easy case I can give you. You sell honey to this wonderful family, and they turn around and give their honey to their newborn, and the child dies of botulism. We all think we know that, right? You don't give honey to newborns, but I guarantee there's a parent out there that will. And then they turn around and sue you. Does this sound out of the realm of possibility? I hope it doesn't. Unlikely? Yeah, but not impossible. So, what happens in that lawsuit is everything you own is available in that lawsuit. Your home, your cars, your kids' college fund, all of it is available because you did business as yourself. This is one of the cool things about being in America. There's no special thing you need to do to conduct business. You can just go do it, but legally you're doing it as you with no protection. This is called an implicit DBA, or doing business as. There's an explicit DBA where you can name your business whatever you want. To protect yourself, and this only really applies if you're going to be in the game of selling anything long term. And this could be honey, it could be nukes, it could be queens, it could be whatever. If you're going to be trying to make any amount of money over a long period of time with your bees, this starts to matter. So the minimum thing to do, and if you're I remember I gave this talk a year ago and I was talking to some people who are farmers and they didn't know any of this. And so you think about what kind of accidents can happen on a farm when you have people helping and everything they own is on the line. That frustrates my insides a bit. The step you can take is forming what's called an LLC, a limited liability company. And the magic words are limited liability. And what that does is it just puts a wall between you and whatever the business owns. So if your business sold the honey, lawsuit, they can only go after what the business assets are. So if your kid's college fund isn't in the business, they can't touch it. Your house isn't in the business, they can't touch it. So it puts a little barrier there. I know all this because I have to conduct business myself, so I have a limited liability company for when I do stuff. My beekeeping stuff is through my limited liability company just because I can, and that makes sure nothing can ever happen. If someone wants to come out and see my bees, I'm happy to do that. I would hate to find out that that's the first time they find out they're allergic to bees, and then they have a grudge. So that's easy for me because I already have it. I'm just putting it out there because I'd hate for anything to happen to any members of our club who want to do with any of this stuff seriously and something tragic happen. It's super boring. If you want to find out more, talk to a lawyer and they'll tell you the deals. But that's the deals about LLCs and how to protect your assets and all that good stuff. But again, if all of us are just giving honey out for gifts and not trying to make any money, this will never really matter until the day you start selling to someone outside your circle of friends and people you trust. Let me think if there's anything else. Products you can sell. So we talked about honey, but anything else you want to sell, like I mentioned, nukes, queens. If you're doing crush and strain, you get all that wax. You can sell lip balms. All that stuff's available. There's a lot of things you can do with the rewards you get as a beekeeper. And there's probably one you'll find that you actually like. I personally hate honey. I think it's obnoxious to deal with. But I like making lip balm. I think that's kind of actually fun for some reason. I don't know why. But maybe you'll find something like that. But all this stuff applies to all that. Obviously you don't have to label your lip balm as honey. But that's got to be on there. So, questions about harvesting, processing, and selling honey? Yes?
Are you buying jars from
Mhm.
some place that's
Yeah.
bulkish kind of thing?
I buy jars on Amazon, and then I cry. It's I buy these they're just plain little jars, 10-ounce jars, I think, or 12-ounce jars. And a pack of 36 jars is $24 or something. And then labels for honey after I design it. It's another $25 for 50 stickers or something. And yeah, I'm the kind of guy that does a little spreadsheet. It's all right, how much if I put into this? Make sure I'm going to be fine. And it sucks, yeah. Because you can fill, gosh, I can't remember offhand, but 2.5 gallons of honey, just one super of honey will fill up a lot of jars that are that size. So then I just put all the jars I want to give away and sell, I make those, and then I just fill up 1 gallon mason jars of honey and put those away. Oh! Who would like to hear a little bit about honey trivia? Yay, there's a hand. So, the word raw in honey Like it has no legal meaning, but I think we all feel like it ought to have a meaning. So there's enzymes in honey, lots of different ones. It comes from the bees as it's like in their body, and then they, regurgitate it out and fan it. That they put stuff into it. I can't remember the names of some of those enzymes. One of them's like glyphosate something. I don't remember. But here's a fun thing that honey does. So honey and the enzymes in honey break down with time and heat, including while it's in the hive. I can't remember the exact numbers about how quickly it breaks down, but like if you heat honey up to like 120 degrees, it's sterile in like 30 minutes, something like that. That should never matter to any of us, but if you start doing like creamed honeys and infused honeys, you're going to heat it up to pull those things off. It's going to be mostly sterile at the end. No big deal. But if it's not sterile, I'll give you an example of what some of those enzymes do. So the one that's like, I couldn't say, when it encounters moisture, it has a reaction that releases hydrogen peroxide, which doesn't sound delicious, I know, but you can't taste it. Like you don't taste hydrogen peroxide when you eat honey. It's not that much. But this does a couple of interesting things. While bees are making honey, right, they're coming back with nectar, which is a lot of moisture, and they're putting it in, and they're getting it ready. That reaction is happening, and it's releasing hydrogen peroxide as a gas. That's a really great antiseptic environment for the bees. So the act of making honey actually helps clean the bee hive as they work to prevent disease, which is pretty neat that they do that. This is also really interesting because lots of people know honey is good for like cuts and burns and all kinds of stuff. Now that you know honey can make hydrogen peroxide, sounds pretty good for a little bit of a wound, because as soon as it touches the moisture from your body, it's going to make hydrogen peroxide and help clean the wound. So raw honey has lots of cool stuff going on in it, but over time, that stuff will stop. If you want to preserve it as long as possible, freeze your honey, because it's temperature and time. Freezing honey is the best way to preserve those enzymes for as long as possible, should you care. That's a little bit of honey trivia. But other than that, I'm kind of done talking about harvesting and processing honey, except for the questions that you have. So what you got? And it doesn't have to be all about honey. We can talk about anything. Yeah?
What's the best way to clean out one of the extractors?
So I had to do this earlier this spring. What I do is I basically disassemble it, which a little bit of work. Hose it down, soap, just get in there, and that's about it. Warm water if I can get away with it, but that's all I've found that really worked for me. And disassembling it was worse than cleaning it, I would say.
Do it out in the yard?
Yeah, I do it out in the driveway with the hose and all that stuff, because everything about honey is it's just a messy day. Yeah.
I seem to have a problem with small hive beetles,
Uh-huh.
and I guess maybe everybody does, I don't know. So the other day, I had some pollen patties in the hive. The other day I went and opened it up, and apparently, well, there are small hive beetles in there, but there was larvae in the pollen patty.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Yeah, so I cut that out.
Yep.
But my question is, since I know there was some larvae in there, which I got rid of, if any of that larva made it into comb and brood chamber, then what does that do with trying to harvest anything? So, yeah, if it's in there, like suppose if you did the crush method, then would you be crushing larvae in the honey? What would
I wouldn't really consider it too much of a concern. Pollen patties do attract lots of hive beetles, but as far as I'm aware, like if your hive is a good strong hive, your bees will clean up a lot of that issue for you. You're not gonna, unless you have like a really bad infestation, your honey crop will not be ruined or infested with hive beetles. I've never heard of that happening so far. Brian, do you?
No, are you doing small in terms of, you're not harvesting a lot of honey, just a few?
probably not really good to harvest.
You could freeze the frames before you did for a couple of days, 24 hours, 48 hours. Take them out and cut them away. But yeah, if there's something in there, it's gonna end up in the honey. It's probably not gonna be a big issue.
Okay, my question is, not a big issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, if you got like a sudden burst of hive beetles, I'd let the bees work on it for a while, and then when it's back under control, I'd go for it. I wouldn't consider that to be any more or less infested than any other time, because there's always beetles in your hive. That's always there. There's always other junk in your hive. It's not a clean environment in general. Bees do an amazing job, but it's far from sterile. It's far from all of that. The honey itself is hostile to everything. That's what makes it work. So I wouldn't worry about the beetles so much, personally.
And even the larva, if the larva's in the home somewhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I can't remember the life cycle of the hive beetle about where the larva likes to be, but I don't think it gets into honey because most of that's going to be capped anyway. So I wouldn't personally worry about it too much. I'd let the hive beetle population dwindle and then go for it. I saw your hand up. No? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have lots of questions.
Go.
We found a lady that was willing to come over and just kind of walk us through the hives,
Uh-huh.
and kind of teach us, and she goes, oh, look, there's a undertaker bee.
Oh, yeah.
So, will you talk about like all the different roles that, that bee, from the time they hatch, what are all the different roles that they can do?
I'll need some help from everyone on this one. So there's lots of different activities bees do. They take on certain roles at different life stages. So you've probably the most common set of bees, two types of bees that people talk about are nurse bees and forager bees. But even with that, there's different roles. So foragers typically leave the hive to go gather pollen and nectar. Nurse bees stay within the hive to create wax, to clean wax, to remove dead bees, attack hive beetles, deal with wax moths. There's the queen's retinue, who are attendants that stick around her like 6 bees, and they feed her and clean her and push her along. There's guard bees. There are bees that will mark and continually remark the hive for like, this is home, with their Nasonov gland. Who am I forgetting? You got drones, but that's not really a role. No? But those are all worker bees. They just take on those roles at different parts of life. Foraging is the last thing they do because it takes time for their bodies to develop and get enough energy, because flying and all that basically kills them. It's that demanding on their bodies.
Some of them are stationed throughout the hive to help circulate the air to keep
Yeah.
the temperature the same.
Yep.
And they can switch roles?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Through their lifetime usually.
Yep.
Is it predictable what they do? They start out?
So when they first hatch, they start out as nurse bees, and they help take care of the other
Brood and larvae and all that.
And they, do all of that. And then one of the last things in their life cycle is going to be the foragers. And you can tell that because as the bees get older, they lose some of the hairs off of them, so they'll look like darker bees. Some of them will be almost completely black. And that's because the hairs on them are kind of falling off.
Yep.
Makes it easier to fly.
Yeah.
Makes it easier to fly, too.
It does.
Yeah, and as you inspect, you'll be able to tell, you'll be able to see workers and say, oh, you must be young, and you must be, you'll be able to see the difference pretty clearly over time. That doesn't mean it's obvious what their job is, but yeah, they take on all kinds of jobs throughout the hive. In the winter, it changes from all those activities to maintaining temperature and feeding. I think those are the two things that all the bees do, and in fact, starting around now-ish, they start laying bees that are actually slightly different than the bees they lay in the summer, and those bees are built to survive the length of winter and do that work, which is different than the bees in the spring and summer, which are mostly built to forage and make honey, and they have a shorter lifespan. So they all do different stuff, and no one tells them what to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting back to the,
Mm-hmm.
the money-making ability of honey. Do you have hives on other people's property?
Oh.
If you do that,
Yeah.
is there some sort of a contract that you have to go through?
Yes.
Stuff like that, you know, hey, let me put a hive on there, I'll give you half or whatever.
So you brought up a good point. So other ways you can make money as a beekeeper is renting your hives to farmers. They need to pollinate. You can also rent yourself as a beekeeper. I don't know how much of a business there is of that. I know there are people that do it, but yes, if you're going to rent your hives, there are contracts available, and I think even the state, like Arkansas State Agricultural Office, has sample templates. They're not hard to find, but basically the agreements will have how many hives per acreage. They'll have agreements around disclosures for pesticides and herbicides that are getting sprayed and on what schedules and who notifies who. All that stuff you want to have ironed out because you don't want your bees to be killed by spray or anything like that. So you have to iron all that out in a contract. And then you can basically get paid for your hives just to exist, and you can go out and deal with it and then remove them when it's time. But there are contract templates. Most, like when I was in North Carolina, universities and everything else provided sample contracts you could use. So I think that's true here too. Either University of Arkansas or the Arkansas Agricultural Office may have sample contracts for that. But yeah, the main thing is about how many hives you'll put per acre and the spraying schedules and who notifies who and what happens then. Because at least when I was going through my classes, we talked about this quite a bit. You go out to check your hives and they're dead, and it's because the farmer didn't tell their workers to not spray that. They sprayed some chemical, didn't tell anyone, and now they broke their contract, and you can do something if you wanted. But that's the game for that.
So, how many hives would you normally have on your farm or whatever? You know, is there an acreage thing, or is it like, oh, there's too many bees in this area, or what?
I vaguely remember some ratio being taught to me at some point, but I've never needed it, so I really cannot recall. Does anyone have know anything about that? Hives per acreage for agriculture? Go ahead, Brian.
I mean, since I've recently been in the class, I said typically it's 2 to 3 times, but it could be anywhere from 1 to 7 per acre. Per acre, 2 to 3 per acre for agricultural.
It's a lot of hives.
How many hives do you have on your acreage?
My hives are with a host family. I don't have land. So I have 5 hives currently. They take up, that much space. And that's it. And that's
I live in Bella Vista. There's a whole schedule on how many hives you can have on your lot.
mine are in Bella Vista as well, but I'm not in the
Based
POA.
Based on your lot size.
Yes.
So it's like a quarter acre, you can have like 2 hives, and then it goes up as like the bigger your lot is, the more you're allowed to have.
And Bella Vista's,
POA thing?
yes.
I believe so, or city, it's one of the 2.
I recall the POA has those rules, and they're the most strict in the area because they're even like how many per acreage, and then how far away from property lines and roads, which is, yeah, it's impossible to fit all that criteria.
I'm saying something about like you gotta have permission from all your neighbors that surround you.
I got a letter in the mail this past week that says there's a woman within 3 miles of me that wants to put hives in, and am I okay with that? And I had to sign it on the bottom and send it to Little Rock. Yeah. I was like, good, more bees, go for it.
Yeah, you have to register.
Yes, we are required by law to register your hives and apiary with the state. It's a 1-page form you fill out.
So each hive has to be registered?
No, your apiary, your yard, your bee yard has to be registered. And it's like GPS coordinates and all that stuff. Yep.
And it's considered livestock. which
Yes.
cracks me up.
Beekeeping is considered animal husbandry and livestock. There aren't any beneficial laws that I know of for the state for beekeeping. Like in Texas, if you had 8 hives, it would be a pretty substantial tax break. But I don't know of anything for that here. But you are in the agricultural business by keeping bees, which means technically you could probably go after like USDA grants and crap like that if you really wanted to go for it. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I was just sitting here thinking if it's, you know, like
Mhm.
farming and stuff, you know, hives aren't cheap.
No, they're not.
Okay. So, can you file for that? Like, if you've got 5, okay?
Yeah.
That's, probably around $1,000.
I don't want to think about it. Maybe. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's
Right.
in the scope of the world, that's not very
Yeah.
much. But you know, for somebody that's, you know, doing things, I mean,
Yeah.
is that capable? Are you capable of doing that?
Like renting my hives to people? Is that what you
No,
mean?
I mean, as far as taking a tax deduction.
Oh, here's the other thing. So I do create, I don't know if I should say this. I do treat my beekeeping as a business expense because it is registered to my business and I do sell stuff from my hives. So when I buy equipment, that's equipment for my businesses. So that's how I treat it.
But you still have, I mean, the other side of the coin is anytime that you sell lip balm or something like that, that also has to be has to be shown in your business.
Yeah, so we're going to jump off a cliff of boring stuff real soon with this, but limited liabilities are considered a disregarded entity by the tax code, which means they're treated just like you. There's nothing special about them except a Schedule C, which just is income and expenses for the most part. So it's one extra bit of tax paperwork, but otherwise not much.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Insurance reducers. I hear
Yeah.
do it now, no, wait until November.
Oh man, we're picking fights. Okay. Insurance reducers are an amazing little tool for beekeepers. Their job is simple enough. They reduce entrances, right? And there's usually 2 holes, one really small and one medium-ish. Basically, the 2 main times you use entrance reducers are for winter. Like, you don't want the big open hole in the winter because then it just gets cold in the hive, so you put it in the smallest notch. The other main use for entrance reducers are if you believe your hive is struggling for some reason, putting an entrance reducer on them can lighten the amount of work they have to help them recover. So a common example is you split your hives. So you've just taken your hive and cut it in 2. You have 2 slightly weak hives. It is not a bad idea to put entrance reducers on the 2 new weak hives temporarily so they have less work to do. And then as they grow up, you can take them off. So the guidance about putting entrance reducers on now or not now, I will say, unless your hives are weak, there's no reason to put them on yet. I would start putting them on once our sort of temperatures start dropping at night below 50 degrees. Then I'd start putting them on. I don't know what anyone else feels about that, but that's kind of how I think about it. Yeah.
Once it starts getting colder at night, it helps maintain the temperatures.
Yeah.
And it keeps any little critters out there trying to
Yes.
stay warm.
Yeah. Critters like to move into beehives because they're nice and toasty. So that's another good job of entrance reducers, but that goes with the temperature. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else about honey? There is a small little detail, and you'll get this advice. I've tried it both ways. I can't tell there's a difference. But after you've extracted your honey, filtered it, and it's in a bucket, some people will tell you to let it wait, let it settle for a few days. I have yet to see any benefit to that whatsoever, other than I just have to look at a honey bucket for 3 days. I don't know what I would expect to settle or float, but nothing ever has. But I'm just going to tell you, you may bump into that advice. My experience is it hasn't mattered. So yeah, I don't know. Like everything you find online, there's a billion different things, and I don't know what they're doing. Does anyone want to know how to render beeswax that hasn't or wants to? Yeah? Okay.
Not yet.
This will be the last thing. Well, if you're harvesting honey, there's a good chance you're going to even if you extract, you're going to wind up with wax cappings. If you crush and strain, you'll have a lot of wax. Rendering beeswax is really, really easy. You do want to basically say the equipment you're going to use to render wax, don't even pretend you're going to get to use it for anything else. It will forever be covered in beeswax. And beeswax is pretty hard to clean off. So the easy way to do it that I have found is you get a big old crock pot, and you can either wrap the wax in cheesecloth or get a drawstring mesh bag with fine mesh. You fill the crock pot up with water, chuck the bag full of wax in it, turn it on and come back in a few hours. Everything that is wax will have melted into the water, and everything you don't want in your wax stays in the bag. So you take the bag, it's going to be super waxy, just let it dry. Turn off your crock pot, all the wax will float to the top and dry into one big sheet of wax. That's it. You may look at the bottom of the wax and it'll have some crud on it. That just means you may need to do it again, or you need a finer mesh, or you may be able to just scrape the crud off the bottom. But then you'll have pure rendered beeswax. If you do it with a double boiler on your stove, totally fine, it goes quicker, but whatever you use will be covered in beeswax. So I just have a little $20 crock pot that's just the beeswax pot. No one puts anything in it that they ever want again.
So I use a silicone, I use a double boiler.
Yeah.
And I have a silicone pan.
Mm-hmm.
So when it cools, you can just kind of pop the wax
Yeah.
out. And I won't use it for anything else, but,
Yeah.
it's a little bit cleaner than.
I put a crock pot in my crock pot,
Yeah.
like you cook with,
Yep.
and throw it away.
And I take my wax and I have a silicone muffin pan and I pour the wax into that, and then I have little 2-ounce blocks of beeswax that I can use for whatever I need after that. But like all that stuff, it just gets messy and you get used to it. Cool. I think I'm done. We're past 8. I will stay around for any more questions, but it's time for our raffle, I think.
Okay, we have $30, so you will get $15. If the last 3 numbers on